The Lord be with you. Do you remember the bumper sticker from years ago? The one that said, "God is my co-pilot." Even as a teenager, I knew there was something wrong with that message. Tim Keller, a pastor in Manhattan, New York, said that in 1970, a Sunday school teacher changed his life with a simple illustration. The teacher said, "Let's assume the distance between the Earth and the Sun, 92 million miles, was reduced to the thickness of a sheet of paper. If that is the case, then the distance between the Earth and the nearest star would be a stack of papers 70 feet high. And the diameter of the galaxy would be a stack of papers 310 miles high." Then Keller's teacher added, "The galaxy is just a speck of dust in the universe, yet Jesus holds the universe together by the word of his power." Finally, the teacher asked her students, "Now, is this the kind of person you ask into your life to be your assistant? Is this the kind of person you ask into your life to be your co-pilot, to be your sous chef, to be your second violin, to be your second anything?" God is no co-pilot. God is no one's assistant. Why would we, in our puny strength, want to run the show when we know someone who has unlimited power? But we do that, don't we? I know I have to raise my hand and cry guilty. How about you? There are times when I realize that I've been making decisions and taking action, getting things done, but without once checking in with God, without considering once how I might glorify God's name by making decisions and taking actions with God completely involved. Oops. That's not exactly the way I want to live my life as a Christian, much less as a pastor. Thankfully, there are a lot of oops moments in the Bible, situations which defy our walk of faith with God, even when God is completely involved. God promised Abram a son when he was 75 years old, but 24 years passed and no son was born to Sarah. Both were now long beyond their childbearing years. It looked like God had failed. Oops. A widow and her son had prayed and prayed. Their food finally ran out, so they went out to collect a few sticks to cook their last meal before they died. It seemed that all their prayers had fallen on deaf ears. Oops. Lazarus became ill. His two sisters sent for Jesus, but Jesus never came. Lazarus died and was put into a tomb. Jesus finally arrived 4 days later. It was too late. Oops. Moses felt called to deliver Israel. He struggled with an Egyptian overseer and ended up killing him and becoming a fugitive from justice for 40 years. Oops. Joseph was given dreams that he would become a great ruler. Instead, his brothers sold him into slavery and imprisonment for 13 years. Oops. Samson was supposed to fight the Philistines, but because he messed up, he was blinded. There was no way a blind man could fulfill such a calling. Oops. Paul prayed and prayed that he might go to Rome, and God answered that prayer. Eventually, Paul made it to Rome in chains as a prisoner. Oops. There are times in life when that look like God has not come through. Any plans God had for us just went haywire, obviously. Even Christians, when we experience trouble, sometimes wonder whether God didn't have the power to stop it, or wasn't loving enough to stop it, or had somehow slipped up, made a mistake. Oops. Every one of these people probably wondered if they or God had somehow gotten off track. We, of course, know that God eventually came through for each and every one of them, but they couldn't see it at the time. Even with God completely involved, they couldn't see it. Sometimes we can't see it either. When those times come, I ask one question. God, what do you know that I don't? I don't think God has given up or has gotten it wrong. Two things which, by the way, will never happen. I trust God. So either I have gotten off track, or there is a reason God seems to be inactive, which, by the way, is something else that will never happen. God is always active in our lives. So be at peace. Pandemic, riots, rampant prejudice, division, fear, whatever it is, be assured God is no co-pilot, and oops is not in God's vocabulary. Amen.